What is up, Jimsy Squad? Today we have a story that defines golden child syndrome to the max. Imagine graduating from Stanford with an MBA, and your parents skip the ceremony to take your brother to Europe for a networking opportunity. Talk about a massive facepalm moment. But hold on, because our OP has a secret that's about to blow their first-class traveling minds. Let's get into it. My name is Alex. I'm 24 years old, and my family left me to eat my graduation dinner alone while they took my golden child brother on a luxury vacation to Europe. It all started on what should have been a happy evening in a kitchen that felt more like a showroom than a home. The air in my parents' kitchen was thick with the expensive scent of roasted rosemary and garlic, a smell that was supposed to mean family, celebration, warmth, but for me, it was just the perfectly curated atmosphere for my own dismissal. The gleaming white marble countertops reflected the cold overhead lights, making the entire room feel like an operating theater. I stood just inside the arched doorway, my palms sweating, my heart doing a nervous staccato against my ribs. I had rehearsed this moment. Just be casual, I told myself. Just be normal. Mom? Dad? My voice came out a little thinner than I'd hoped. My mother, Eleanor, didn't turn around. She was meticulously arranging asparagus spears on a porcelain platter, her movements precise and elegant. She was a woman who orchestrated galas for a living. Our family life was just another event to be managed. Alex, darling, perfect timing. Your father and James have some wonderful news. Her tone was bright, brittle, the same one she used with caterers and valets. At the head of the massive oak table, my father, Richard, grunted in acknowledgement. He was a titan of finance, a man who saw the world as a series of assets and liabilities. Right now, his attention was firmly on the glowing screen of his phone, his thumb flicking through stock tickers. A glass of deep red Cabernet, probably worth more than my monthly food budget, sat sweating beside his hand. Opposite him, my brother James, the golden son, leaned back, a picture of smug satisfaction. At 26, he was everything my father valued, a newly minted associate at a powerhouse law firm, confident, conventional, and handsome in a way that spoke of country clubs and inherited status. He caught my eye and gave me a lazy, triumphant grin. "Go on, James. Tell him," my father prompted, his eyes still glued to his phone. It was a command, not an invitation. James savored the moment, stretching like a contented cat. "Well," he began, drawing the word out to command the room's full attention. "It's official. The partners had a meeting this afternoon. My promotion is locked in. I'm a senior associate now." "Oh, James!" My mother abandoned her asparagus and rushed to his side, enveloping him in a cloud of expensive perfume. "We are so proud of you. We never had a doubt." My father finally looked up, his face breaking into a rare, wide smile that never, ever seemed to find its way to me. "That's my boy. A real career. Tangible success. That's what matters." He raised his glass in a toast. "We're celebrating. Properly." This was it. My turn. I took a half step forward. That's really great, James. Congratulations." I forced a smile. "And speaking of celebrating, I actually have some news too. I just got out of my final meeting with my advisor. Everything's confirmed. My graduation is on the 22nd. The celebratory atmosphere evaporated. A sudden cold silence descended on the room. My mother's smile froze and then melted away. She threw a nervous, almost imperceptible glance at my father. My father picked up his wine glass, his good mood vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. He swirled the contents, his gaze fixed on the vortex in the glass. "The 22nd, he repeated, his voice utterly flat. "Well, that's inconvenient." A familiar knot of ice formed in my stomach. "Inconvenient? What do you mean?" "We've booked a trip," he said, his tone final, as if announcing a corporate merger. "To celebrate James, his promotion. He's earned a real vacation." "We're going to Europe," my mother added quickly, her voice a little too high. "Paris. James has always wanted to see the Louvre properly." "It's more than a vacation, Eleanor," my father corrected her, his voice laced with impatience. "It's a networking opportunity. The son of one of the senior partners will be there. It's important for James to build these connections." I stared at them, my mind struggling to catch up. A vacation, a networking opportunity for James. On my graduation day, the day I would walk across the stage with a master's degree from Stanford Business School. "You're leaving on the 22nd?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. James finally spoke up, unable to resist twisting the knife. "First class, little brother," he said with a chuckle, flashing his perfect teeth. "Trying out that new Polaris lounge. Looks sick. Too bad you'll be stuck in a stuffy auditorium. Hey, send us a picture, will you?" I looked from his smirking face to my mother's anxious one, and finally to my father's, which was now a mask of cold indifference. He had already dismissed me. The decision was made. The liability had been written off. "So you're just not coming," I stated. It wasn't a question. My father finally met my gaze, his eyes devoid of apology. "It's a celebration of a real-world achievement, Alex. It's time you understood that. We'll be thinking of you. Try to enjoy your day." Try to enjoy your day? Man, the coldness in Richard's voice is practically sub-zero. They're upgrading to a presidential suite for the brothers' promotion, while Alex is left to drive his 5-year-old sedan back to an empty kitchen. This family doesn't just have favorites, they have a total blind spot for brilliance. That was it. My entire academic career, all the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the pressure, all of it reduced to a scheduling conflict, an inconvenience. I didn't fight. I didn't yell. A strange, chilling calm washed over me. The years of quiet resentment had finally cooled and hardened into something else entirely. Something solid. "Okay," I said, my voice eerily steady. I nodded once. "I understand. I hope you have a great trip." I turned and walked out of the pristine kitchen, the sound of my mother's relieved sigh following me. As the door swung silently shut, I heard my father's voice, already back to business. "Now, about the hotel, James. I was thinking we should upgrade to the presidential suite." I didn't hear the rest. I was already gone. They thought I was retreating in defeat. They didn't realize I was advancing toward a different battlefield entirely. The 40-minute drive from the sterile perfection of my family's Atherton estate to my life in Palo Alto was like traveling between dimensions. I peeled off the highway, leaving the world of manicured lawns and quiet judgment behind. The moment I stepped out of my unremarkable 5-year-old sedan, a car I kept specifically for the purpose of maintaining my cover, the air changed. It was crisper, charged with the energy of innovation and ambition. My building wasn't just a building, it was a statement. A sleek, modern tower of glass and steel. I bypassed the main entrance using a private elevator accessed from the secure parking garage. The elevator, activated by a thumbprint scanner, opened directly into my penthouse. The space was a testament to my other life. It was vast and minimalist, with polished concrete floors and one entire wall made of smart glass that offered a breathtaking, panoramic view of the city and the distant hills. There was no clutter, no family photos, no personal trinkets. It was a command center. "Welcome home, Alex," a calm female voice emanated from invisible speakers. It was Atlas, the artificial intelligence I had designed, my co-pilot and confidant. "Hello, Atlas," I replied, dropping my keys into a simple wooden bowl on the console, the only sentimental object in the entire place. "Status report." "All systems are nominal," Atlas replied. "Mitchell Technologies servers are operating at 99.8% efficiency. The Tokyo and London offices are signing off for the day. Sophia Chen has requested a call at your convenience." "Patch her through," I said, shrugging off the worn hoodie I always wore when visiting my parents and tossing it onto a chair. Underneath, I was wearing a simple, well-fitting black t-shirt. As I walked toward the kitchen island, the glass walls shimmered, transforming into a semi-transparent data hub. Charts, graphs, and lines of scrolling code overlaid the glittering cityscape. In the center, the bold, clean logo of my company, Mitchell Technologies. And beside it, the number that governed my secret world, updated in real time after the latest funding round had officially closed that afternoon. Valuation, $140 million. A smaller window appeared, a project file I'd named Phase 3, the graduation plan. A single button glowed, Initiate. I hadn't pressed it yet. Tonight's dinner was the final variable, the final test of a hypothesis I'd been formulating for years. The results were conclusive. Sophia's face appeared on the screen, her expression a mixture of concern and exasperation. She was in her late 20s, a prodigy I'd headhunted from a rival firm 2 years ago. She was the best COO in the business, the operational genius who turned my wild ideas into a functional, profitable reality. "So?" she asked, skipping the pleasantries. "How bad was it?" I filled a tall glass with cold water from the dispenser, the silence stretching as I took a long drink. "It was exactly as the predictive model anticipated," I said, finally. "They're not coming. They're taking James to Paris to celebrate his promotion." Sophia winced. "Alex, I'm sorry. That's awful." "No," I said, my voice devoid of self-pity. "It's clarifying. It's the data I needed." I looked at the glowing Initiate button. "We're moving forward. The plan is a go." "The board is having a collective aneurysm," she warned. "Marcus has already called me 3 times today. He thinks announcing your identity at a public university event is, and I quote, an act of catastrophic financial insanity. He says it's uncontrolled. It's emotional." "It is emotional," I agreed, "but it is not uncontrolled. Send him the risk mitigation protocols again, and tell him to trust the process. And Sarah?" "Sarah loves it," I said with a slight smile. "My head of communications, Sarah Williams, saw the world as a narrative battleground, and she believed this was our D-Day. She's already drafted 3 different versions of the press release." "Of course she has," Sophia muttered. She leaned closer to her camera. "Just be sure, Alex. Once this bell is rung, we can't unring it." "The bell's been ringing for 20 years, Soph. I'm just finally going to let everyone else hear it." We spent another 30 minutes going over logistics, our conversation crisp and efficient. After we disconnected, the penthouse was silent again, save for the low hum of the servers in a climate-controlled room down the hall. My gaze fell on the simple wooden bowl by the door. It had been a gift from my grandmother, Margaret. It used to sit on her kitchen counter, filled with hard candies. My mind drifted back 5 years to that same kitchen. It was the only place in my family's world where I had ever felt truly seen. I was 19, a terrified freshman with an idea that felt like a lightning strike in my brain, a new kind of encryption algorithm that learned and adapted. I'd tried to explain it to my dad over a holiday dinner. He'd listened for about 30 seconds, his eyes glazing over, before cutting me off. "Son, that's great, but it's all theoretical. It's not a real job. Focus on getting an internship at Goldman. Your brother's contact there can probably get you an interview if you play your cards right." Defeated, I went to my grandmother's house the next day. I spread my frantic scribbles and complex diagrams across her worn oak table. For a full hour, I poured out my heart, my voice cracking with a mixture of fervent passion and crippling insecurity. I expected her to pat my head and offer me a cookie. She didn't. She listened. She asked questions, not polite, indulgent questions, but sharp, insightful ones that pushed me, challenged me. "How would you protect it from a brute force attack? What's the computational overhead? Who are your potential first customers?" When I had finally answered every question, she got up, not with the fragility of an old woman, but with a sense of purpose. She walked to an old hutch in the corner and pulled out a small, locked cedar box. "Your grandfather, God rest his soul, was a wonderful man, a safe man," she said, her back to me. "He built a comfortable life by making safe bets. I, on the other hand," she trailed off, then turned, placing the box on the table between us. "I always thought the biggest risks brought the biggest rewards." She produced a small, ornate key from a chain around her neck and unlocked the box. Inside was not what I expected. There was no jewelry, no old letters. There was just a dusty passbook for a savings account and a single folded note from my grandfather. His familiar, elegant script read, "For a gamble that feels like a sure thing." "Your father doesn't know about this account," my grandmother said, her voice low and conspiratorial. This was my Mad money, as your grandfather called it. Money I saved from my own household budget. Money I won in a lucky bridge game. It was mine. She slid the passbook across the table. The balance read $50,000. This is a loan, Alexander, not a gift. It's an investment. From me to you. This is my secret, and now it's ours. Don't you dare lose my mad money. Grandma Margaret is the real MVP. While the dad was busy staring at stock tickers and ignoring Alex's theoretical job ideas, Grandma saw the fire. That $50,000 wasn't just a loan, it was a middle finger to the family's loud indifference. Every empire needs a spark, and Grandma just lit the fuse. That $50,000 was the spark that lit the fuse. I never asked my family for another cent. I lived like a pauper, pouring every ounce of my energy, every dollar from that account, into building Mitchell Technologies. I did it from my dorm room, from the university library, from the 24-hour computer lab. I built my empire in the dark, fueled by my grandmother's quiet rebellion and my family's loud indifference. Now that empire was about to step into the sun. My train of thought was broken by a call that made my stomach clench. The name on the screen was a ghost from my past. Elena Rodriguez. We had dated during our freshman year. It was a brief, brilliant, all-consuming flame that had burned out almost as quickly as it ignited. We were two alike, two comets on a collision course. The breakup was amicable but painful. Now, she was one of the most respected young tech journalists in the country. I took a breath and answered, "Elena." Alex, her voice was exactly as I remembered it, cool, confident, and cutting straight to the point. "I'm not going to waste your time with small talk. I've got a source, a reliable one. He's been feeding my editor tips for weeks about a ghost founder at Stanford, some mystery student sitting on a world-changing technology. The tip mentioned data encryption and a rumored link to the quantum computing department. It took me about 5 seconds to figure out it had to be you." I was silent. My rival, Victor Chang. He wasn't just spreading rumors to investors. He was trying to get the press to do his dirty work for him. "Here's the deal," Elena went on, her tone shifting from professional to something more personal. "My editor is chomping at the bit. He wants to run a speculative piece, an exposé, you know the type, full of innuendo, questions about your credibility, the works. It will define you before you ever get a chance to define yourself." She paused. "Or you can give me the story, the exclusive. You control the narrative, you tell it your way. I will sit on it until the moment they call your name at graduation. I give you my word, Alex." It was a power play, but it was also a lifeline. She was offering me the one thing I desperately needed: control. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice quiet. "The speculative piece would still be a huge story for you." I could almost hear her shrug. "Let's just say I don't like being used as a pawn by people like Victor Chang. And maybe I think the world should hear the story from the person who actually lived it." "So, what's it going to be?" The pieces were all moving on the board, faster than I had anticipated. My plan had been to control the reveal myself, but the world was forcing my hand. "Okay, Elena," I said, a decision solidifying. "You have the exclusive. My head of communications will be in touch tomorrow with a secure data package. Her name is Sarah Williams." "Good," she said, a note of satisfaction in her voice. "Don't make me regret this, Alex." "You won't," I said. "The story is better than you can possibly imagine." After I hung up, I stood and walked to the glass wall. I pressed the Initiate button on the screen. It glowed green, and a cascade of automated protocols began to execute in the background. Emails were sent, security teams were activated, a countdown timer appeared in the corner of the screen. The game was on, and I was finally ready to play. The days leading up to graduation were a masterclass in controlled chaos. My life became a series of encrypted calls, secure video conferences, and covert meetings. On the surface, I was just Alex Mitchell, Stanford MBA candidate, finishing up my final papers. But behind the scenes, I was a general maneuvering my troops for the battle of my life. The first skirmish was one I had to fight myself. Victor Chang agreed to meet me at a soulless third-wave coffee shop in Palo Alto. It was his choice of venue, a place that was all about image, all smooth concrete and blonde wood, where people paid $7 for a latte just to be seen. He was already there, holding court at a small table, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than my car. He looked like a predator who had just spotted his prey. "Alex, my man," he said, his smile as artificial as the sweetener packets on the table. "Glad you could tear yourself away from the books." I didn't sit. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction. "Cut the act, Victor. I know you're the one who's been talking to the press, to investors. What's your game?" He leaned back, feigning surprise. "Game? I'm just a concerned competitor. I hear whispers about this revolutionary new tech, this miracle company, and yet no one knows who's behind it. It's strange. It makes people in our world nervous. Secrecy implies a problem, a flaw. Maybe the tech isn't as solid as the rumors say. Maybe the founder is in over his head." His eyes glinted with malice. "All I'm doing is asking the questions." "You're not asking questions. You're spreading poison," I said, my voice dangerously low. I could feel the eyes of other patrons on us. "Poison? Or an antidote to hype?" he retorted, his voice rising slightly. He was enjoying this, performing for the room. "Look, I'll give you some free advice. Whatever grand reveal you're planning for your little graduation party, cancel it. Come clean. Admit you're just a kid with a half-baked idea before you embarrass yourself and take a lot of good people's money down with you." He stood up then, a picture of condescending magnanimity. He straightened the knot of his silk tie. "It's for your own good. The market eats secrets for lunch, kid." He clapped me on the shoulder, a gesture of dominance, and then strolled out of the cafe, leaving me fuming in his wake. He hadn't just threatened me. He had laid out his entire strategy. He was going to frame me as a fraud, a naive student playing in the big leagues. He was trying to short-sell my reputation before it even had an IPO. I walked out of that coffee shop with ice in my veins and dialed my team. Within the hour, we were convened in my virtual war room. Marcus, my CFO, was practically hyperventilating. His face, usually a calm, stoic mask, was pale and beaded with sweat on the high-definition screen. "This is a disaster, a complete disaster. He's preempted us. He's seeding doubt with our most crucial backers. Alex, we have to pull the plug on this. We need to go into damage control. Issue a statement, shore up investor confidence, maybe bring in a seasoned public-facing CEO to calm the waters." "Absolutely not," Sarah interjected before he could finish. Her expression was fierce, her eyes bright with the thrill of the fight. "Marcus, you're thinking like a financier. You need to think like a storyteller. Victor has just handed us the perfect villain for our story. He's no longer a competitor. He's an antagonist. And what do heroes do to antagonists? They defeat them. Publicly." She turned her full attention to me. "We don't retreat. We don't postpone. We accelerate. We lean into it. We let Victor and the press build up the mystery, the doubt. We let them ask, 'Who is this ghost? Is he real?' And then, at the height of that speculation, you don't just walk onto the stage, Alex. You stride out like you own the place, armed with undeniable proof. You don't just tell them who you are. You show them. You make Victor look like a jealous, bitter fool." "It's too risky," Marcus protested, his voice strained. "The market doesn't respond to stories, Sarah. It responds to stability. The market responds to power," she shot back, "and nothing is more powerful than a perfectly executed narrative." As they argued, their voices faded into the background. I was thrown back to a memory, a moment that was, in its own way, the origin story of this entire conflict. I was 16, at a parent-teacher conference. My physics teacher, a brilliant but harried man, was trying to explain my latest project to my father. "Mr. Mitchell," the teacher had said, his hands gesturing excitedly, "Alex isn't just completing the assignments. He's deconstructing them. For the last project, he didn't just build the circuit I asked for. He wrote a simulation program that predicted its potential points of failure with 98% accuracy. It's graduate-level work. Frankly, I'm not even sure how he did it." I had been beaming. desperate for a sliver of praise from my father. My dad had listened with a polite, strained expression. Then he'd turned to the teacher and said, with a dismissive wave of his hand, "That's all very interesting, but is it practical? Is it on the test?" His brother James gets straight A's just by doing the work as assigned. Alex always has to make things so complicated. I'm more concerned with his ability to work within a system, to follow instructions. That's what matters in the real world. The teacher had deflated, and so had I. My father hadn't seen brilliance. He'd seen a deviation from the norm. He'd seen a risk. My mind, my way of thinking, wasn't an asset. It was a problem to be managed. I snapped back to the present. Sarah and Marcus were looking at me, waiting for my decision. "Sarah's right," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "My entire life, I've been told my way of thinking is a liability, that it's too complicated. Well, that complication is now worth $140 million. We're not hiding it. We're not apologizing for it. We're putting it on center stage." I laid out the plan with a new, unshakable clarity. "Marcus, I don't want you to just prepare a data package. I want you to prepare a weapon. I want audited financials, patent registrations, signed contracts with our Fortune 500 clients. I want it ready to be deployed to every major investor and news outlet the second I am off that stage. I want to bury Victor in facts." Marcus, seeing the resolve in my eyes, finally nodded, a grim look of determination replacing his panic. "Sarah," I continued, "I want you to work with Elena Rodriguez. Feed her just enough to keep her editor interested but hungry for more. Let them build the myth of the ghost founder. The bigger the mystery, the more powerful the reveal. And Sophia," I said, looking at my COO, "lock it down. Make sure the team is ready for the influx. Prepare for a system-wide stress test. When this news breaks, the world is going to come knocking. I want us to be ready to open the door." A new energy surged through our virtual meeting. We were no longer on the defensive. We were a unit, a team with a clear, audacious mission. The final push came 2 nights before the ceremony. I was in my penthouse, running through the final presentation, when my phone buzzed. It was a group text from my father. The attached picture was a grinning selfie of him, my mother, and James, all holding flutes of champagne in what was clearly a first-class airport lounge. The lighting was golden and warm, an image of perfect, happy family life. The caption from James read, "Cheers from SFO! The promotion tour begins. Wish you were here, but you're probably cramming for finals. LOL. Good luck with your little speech, bro. We'll be thinking of you when we're eating steak frites in Paris." I read the message once, then twice. The casual condescension, the LOL. The clear, unambiguous message that my entire world, my graduation, was nothing more than a passing joke to them, an amusing little footnote in the grand, important story of their lives. Any remaining flicker of sentimentality, any thought of reconciliation, any desire for their approval, died in that moment. It wasn't a painful death. It was a quiet, cold, and final execution. I looked at the picture one last time, the 3 of them, smiling, oblivious. Then I deleted it. I picked up my phone and sent a single, encrypted text message to my entire executive team. It had only one word. War. War. Just one word, and I've got chills. The family sent a selfie from a first-class lounge with a LOL caption while Alex was preparing for his biggest moment. That was the final nail in the coffin of reconciliation. You wanted a joke, James? Well, the punchline is going to be expensive. The night before the ceremony was the longest of my life. The city below my penthouse was a silent, sprawling galaxy of light, but it offered no comfort. It felt distant, alien. Inside, the silence was a physical presence, pressing in on me from all sides. It was the silence of a chessboard right before the final game-ending move. I had told myself I would sleep. I had told myself I would be calm, rested, prepared. Instead, I found myself sitting on the edge of my unmade bed, staring at the dark reflection of a stranger in the glass wall. He looked young, tired. He looked like any other 24-year-old student about to be unleashed into the world. He didn't look like a CEO. He didn't look like a man who was about to burn his own life down just to see what would rise from the ashes. The carefully constructed walls of my resolve began to crumble. The weight of what I was about to do settled on me, a crushing, physical burden. This wasn't just a corporate strategy anymore. It wasn't a clever PR move. It was an act of profound, personal violence. I was about to humiliate my family on a world stage. I was about to turn our private dysfunction into a public spectacle. What if they were right? What if I was just a naive kid playing with forces I didn't understand? What if my success was just a fluke, a bubble of luck that was about to pop in the most spectacular way imaginable? What if, after all of it, the revelation, the money, the fame, I looked at their faces, and all I saw was hatred? What if I proved I was smarter, richer, more powerful, and ended up completely, utterly alone? My hand was trembling as I reached for my phone. My fingers felt clumsy, disconnected from my brain. I scrolled through my contacts and pressed the one name that represented my only lifeline to this secret world. Sophia. She answered on the first ring, her voice instantly sharp and alert, cutting through the haze of my panic. Alex, it's 2 a.m. What's wrong? I can't do it, I heard myself say, the voice a hoarse whisper that didn't sound like my own. Soph, the whole thing. It's a mistake. We have to stop it. We have to call it off. I started pacing, the words tumbling out of me in a frantic, desperate rush. Marcus was right. It's insane. It's emotional and reckless. And what am I even trying to prove? That I'm better than them? That I won? What if I win and I lose everything that actually matters? I ran a hand through my hair, my breath coming in ragged gasps. We could just sell. We could sell a piece of the company, a small piece. We'd have more money than we could ever spend. We could go anywhere, live quietly. No press, no board meetings, no family drama. We could just be free. On the other end of the line, there was only silence. Sophia let me unravel. She let the storm of my fear rage until it had exhausted itself. I finally sank back onto the edge of the bed, my head in my hands, waiting for her to tell me I was right, that we should abort the mission. When she finally spoke, her voice was not soft or soothing. It was calm, steady, and unyielding as granite. And then what, Alex? The simple question cut through my panic like a laser. What do you mean? I mean, after you run away, she said, her voice dropping a little lower. After you go live on your private island, or whatever it is you're picturing, what happens then? Do you think your father will suddenly respect you? Do you think your brother will stop smirking? Do you think the feeling of being invisible will just magically disappear because you have a fat bank account? She took a breath. You didn't build this company to buy your freedom, Alex. You built this company because you are free. You built it because it's the purest expression of who you are. This plan, this crazy, reckless public plan, it's not for them. You told me that yourself. It's for you. It's you finally refusing to live in the shadows they put you in. It's you taking your two separate lives and making them one. It's about integrity. Your integrity. Every word was a perfectly aimed dart, puncturing the balloon of my self-pity. She wasn't my COO in that moment. She was my conscience. My mind flashed to my grandmother, to the cedar box, to her mad money. She hadn't invested in a company. She had invested in a spirit of quiet rebellion, of refusing to be defined by the expectations of others. To run now would be to dishonor that investment. It would be the one thing she had asked me not to do. It would be to prove her gamble had been a mistake. A long, shuddering breath escaped my lips. The panic receded, replaced by a cold, clear-eyed certainty. You're right, I said, my voice strong again. I'm sorry. I just needed to hear it. I know, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Now get some sleep, boss. You have a world to conquer tomorrow." After the call, a profound sense of peace settled over me. The storm had passed. I walked into my closet and unzipped the garment bag containing the Tom Ford suit. It was dark charcoal, almost black, with a subtle pattern that was only visible up close. It was a suit that meant business. It was the skin I was about to step into. The next morning, I woke with the sun. I went through my ritual with a new sense of purpose. A 5-mile run along the deserted streets of Palo Alto, my feet pounding a steady rhythm against the pavement. A scalding hot shower that washed away the last vestiges of fear. Then I got dressed. Slowly, methodically. The soft Egyptian cotton of the shirt, the heavy silk of the tie, knotted with perfect precision. The cool, reassuring weight of the jacket on my shoulders. It wasn't armor anymore. It was me. The last thing I did was slip the heavy, black graduation gown over it all. A perfect disguise. A Trojan horse, ready to be wheeled onto the stage. As I stood by the door, ready to leave, my phone chimed. It was an alert from the Forbes News app. Sarah's work. The headline read, "The Stanford Ghost, mystery tech founder and major donor to be revealed at today's commencement." The myth had been created. The stage was set. It was time for the ghost to finally materialize. The Stanford Stadium was a dizzying kaleidoscope of black gowns, cheering families, and bright California sunshine. The air was thick with hope and expensive perfume. I moved through it all, an anonymous face in a sea of graduates, my heart a steady, powerful drum against my ribs. My security team, disguised as ushers and campus staff, were shadows in my periphery, their presence a silent, reassuring net. Across the vast lawn, I saw Sarah in the designated press area. She was holding a clipboard, looking cool and professional as she spoke to a knot of intrigued reporters. She saw me, and her lips curved into the faintest of smiles. A short distance away, Elena stood with a cameraman, her expression unreadable. She gave me a sharp, almost imperceptible nod. All the pieces were in position. I took my seat in the business school section, the scratchy fabric of the gown a strange contrast to the fine wool of the suit beneath it. The preliminary speeches began, a predictable drone of inspirational quotes and well wishes. I didn't hear a word. My focus was elsewhere. And then my phone vibrated in my pocket. A text. Blocked number. My blood ran cold. "Alex, it's your father. There has been a change of plans. We are on our way." I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process the words. It was impossible. A joke. A mistake. I typed back, my fingers clumsy. "What are you talking about? You're supposed to be on a plane." The reply was instantaneous, frantic. "Your grandmother," she called, said some things, and a news alert, something about a special announcement at your graduation. "What is going on, Alex?" "We are stuck in traffic on the 101. We will be late." I leaned back in my chair, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. Grandma Margaret, the ultimate player. She hadn't just made a bet. She had just gone all in. My carefully controlled demonstration had just become a live-fire exercise. This was better. This was so much better. The ceremony dragged on. I felt 1,000 pairs of eyes on me without knowing why. The valedictorian spoke. Awards were given. And then, finally, the dean of the Graduate School of Business, a formidable woman named Dr. Annabelle Sterling, walked to the podium. "And now," her voice echoed through the stadium, commanding immediate silence, "before we confer the degrees upon this exceptional class, we have a special, and I must say unprecedented announcement to make." A ripple of curiosity went through the crowd. I saw my classmates exchange confused glances. At that exact moment, I scanned the bleachers at the very back of the stadium, and I saw them. They looked like refugees. My father, his face pale and slick with sweat, his expensive travel blazer rumpled. My mother, her hair a mess, her hand clutching his arm as if she were about to faint. And James, his mouth slightly agape, his golden boy tan looking sickly under the harsh sun. They had made it. They were just in time for the show. Stanford has long been the nexus of academia and industry, Dean Sterling continued, her voice filled with gravitas. A place where the brightest minds come to learn, and in some rare cases, to build the future while they are still students. She paused, letting the suspense build. Today, we want to honor such a student who, while maintaining a perfect 4 GPA in our rigorous MBA program, has also, under a cloak of complete anonymity, built one of the most disruptive and important technology companies of the last 5 years. The murmuring in the crowd grew louder. I saw my father lean forward, cupping a hand to his ear, his confusion turning to intense, focused attention. Operating in stealth mode, this student's company, Mitchell Technologies, has quietly become the gold standard in predictive data security. Their core technology is already being used by governments and Fortune 500 companies around the globe to protect our most vital digital infrastructure. I saw the exact moment the name registered. Mitchell Technologies. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father shook his head slightly, as if to clear it, a look of profound disbelief on his face. James just stared, his eyes wide, his brain clearly trying to solve an impossible equation. Dean Sterling raised her voice, letting the next piece of information land like a bombshell. This founder, who is sitting among us today, recently closed a private funding round that values his company at $140 million. A collective audible gasp swept through the stadium. It was a sound of pure shock. Phones were raised, people were turning in their seats, trying to find the mystery millionaire in their midst. But I only watched my family. I watched the disbelief on their faces curdle into a new, horrifying understanding. I saw the color drain from my father's face as if he had seen a ghost. I saw my mother begin to tremble. I saw James stumble back a step, his hand gripping the railing for support. "It is my profound honor," Dean Sterling declared, a proud, brilliant smile on her face, "to ask our most distinguished graduate, a true visionary, the founder and CEO of Mitchell Technologies, to please come to the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Mr. Alex Mitchell, my name." Echoing, resonating. For a single crystalline moment there was absolute silence. Then the giant jumbotron screen behind the stage, which had been displaying the university seal, flickered and changed. The sleek, minimalist logo of Mitchell Technologies filled the screen. And beside it, a professional corporate headshot me in a suit, looking directly at the camera with an expression of calm confidence, appeared next to the words, "Alex Mitchell, founder and CEO." Boom! There it is! Can we just appreciate the absolute masterpiece of timing here? The Jumbotron reveals his face, the stadium erupts, and his family is sitting in the back looking like they just saw a ghost. $140 million valuation? That's a lot of steak frites in Paris, James. The stadium erupted. It wasn't just applause, it was a roar, a tidal wave of sound, of shock, of frenzied excitement. The main camera found me in the crowd, and my face, my real-time stunned face, was suddenly broadcast on the giant screen next to my corporate portrait. Slowly, deliberately, I stood up. The world seemed to move in slow motion as I made my way down the aisle, up the steps, and onto the stage. The roar of the crowd was a physical force, pressing against me. I shook the dean's hand, her grip was firm, her eyes sparkling, and I walked to the center of the stage, to the microphone. I stood there for a moment, letting the wave of sound wash over me. Then, in a single, fluid motion that I had rehearsed in my mind 1,000 times, I reached up, untied the cord of my black graduation gown, and let it slip from my shoulders. It pooled at my feet on the stage, a discarded skin, revealing the perfectly tailored dark charcoal suit beneath. The roar of the crowd intensified. I waited patiently for it to subside. Finally, there was a hushed, expectant silence. I looked out at the sea of faces, and then my gaze traveled to the very back, locking onto the 3 shattered figures who were my family. I spoke, my voice calm and clear, amplified to every corner of the stadium. "There are two kinds of education," I began. "There's the one you get in a classroom. It's about following the rules, learning the systems, and finding the right answers. It's valuable. It's important. But then," I continued, my voice dropping slightly, gaining intensity, "there's the education you get when you leave the classroom, the one you get in the middle of the night staring at a line of code that won't compile. The one you get in a boardroom, defending an idea no one else believes in. The one you get in the rooms you were never invited into." He let that sink in. That second education, it teaches you something different. It teaches you that sometimes the rules need to be broken, that sometimes the systems need to be rebuilt, and that sometimes the right answer is the one nobody else has even thought to ask. My eyes were still on my father. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the last 10 minutes. "Today, I'm deeply proud to graduate with both educations," I said, my voice ringing with a new, undisguised power. "And to honor the institution that provided the space for both, Mitchell Technologies is pledging a $5 million endowment to the Stanford Scholarship Fund. This fund will be dedicated to students who are working on the complicated ideas, the ones who don't fit the mold, the builders, the dreamers, the rebels. The rooms you were never invited into." That line hits hard. Alex isn't just boasting about money, he's calling out every time Hart chose James's assigned work over his complicated ideas. A $5 million endowment just to prove a point? That is the ultimate power move. The stadium exploded into a standing ovation. The applause was a physical, thundering validation, but I barely heard it. My attention was fixed on the three people at the back of the stadium. My mother was sobbing uncontrollably into my father's shoulder. My father was staring at me, his face a wasteland of shock and regret. And James. James just looked utterly, completely broken, as if he had just realized the game he had spent his whole life winning was not the one that mattered at all. I had been told to celebrate on my own, and in a way, I was. But now the whole world was celebrating with me. The moment the ceremony ended, chaos descended. Stepping off the stage was like diving into a human ocean. A frantic, swirling mass of people, reporters shouting questions, classmates slapping my back, professors trying to shake my hand, university donors trying to make an introduction. It was a sensory overload, a cacophony of sudden, overwhelming fame. But through the whirlwind, my team moved with the precision of a special forces unit. Sarah appeared at my left, a tablet in her hand, while two of my security detail, dressed in unassuming campus event staff uniforms, seamlessly formed a protective bubble around me. "Mr. Mitchell will be making a formal statement later today," Sarah announced, her voice calm but authoritative, cutting through the din. "We appreciate your enthusiasm, but we need to keep moving." She was a maestro conducting the chaos. That's when I saw him, Victor Chang. He was standing with a small group of venture capitalists who had been seated in a VIP section. His face was a grotesque mask of fury and disbelief, his skin a blotchy, unhealthy red. Our eyes met, and something inside him, some last thread of professional decorum, snapped. "It's a lie," he bellowed, shoving his way through the crowd toward us. His designer suit was rumpled, his voice shrill. "He's a fraud. That valuation is smoke and mirrors. His tech is unstable. He's a kid, a liar." A few reporters, smelling a conflict, immediately swung their cameras in his direction. It was the exact scene of public humiliation he had probably fantasized about for me. My security guard, a large, stoic man named David, moved to physically block him. I put a hand on David's arm. "Let him," I said, my voice quiet. Victor didn't get within 10 feet of me. A calm, unassuming figure stepped into his path. It was Marcus Washington, my CFO. Marcus, a man who usually avoided confrontation at all costs, was now standing like a rock, his expression one of profound, weary disappointment. He held up his own tablet, its screen glowing. "Mr. Chang," Marcus said, his voice not loud, but carrying with the devastating weight of factual authority, "I would strongly advise you to retract that statement. Slander and libel are very serious accusations. As the CFO of Mitchell Technologies, I have on this tablet our fully audited financials from Deloitte, our latest independent technology stress test from the Kestrel Group, and a list of our current multi-year contracts with several members of the Fortune 50, required to report any fraudulent activity. Shall I call the SEC right now and share my screen, or would you prefer to discuss this with our legal team? I assure you, our lead counsel for intellectual property litigation is much more expensive than yours. Victor stopped dead. The color drained from his face, leaving it a pasty, sickly white. He looked from Marcus's unblinking stare to the now deeply intrigued faces of the venture capitalists he had been trying to court. He had tried to start a fire and had ended up dousing himself in gasoline. In a single, brutally efficient takedown, Marcus had not just defended me, he had annihilated Victor's credibility. Without another word, Victor turned and all but fled, swallowed by the crowd, a diminished, pathetic figure. Sarah leaned in close, a glint of triumph in her eyes. "Narrative controlled," she whispered. Then, without missing a beat, she turned to Elena. "You've got your 5 minutes for the exclusive follow-up. Walk with us." As we moved toward a quieter, prearranged location, I glanced back. My family was still there, huddled together at the edge of the crowd, looking like shipwreck survivors on an island they didn't recognize. They were watching my team, my protectors, my corporate soldiers, dismantle a threat with ruthless efficiency. They weren't just watching me, they were watching the machine I had built, and it terrified them. The interview with Elena was a blur of professional questions and carefully prepared answers. She was good, probing for an emotional angle, but I stuck to the script Sarah and I had prepared. I spoke about the company's mission, about the future of data security, about the importance of philanthropy. I didn't mention my family. I didn't need to. Their story was written all over their faces. When it was over, I knew I couldn't delay it any longer. I took a deep breath, thanked my team, and began the long walk across the lawn toward the 3 people who shared my last name. The crowd seemed to part for me instinctively, a silent testament to the power shift that had just occurred. As I got closer, I could see the details of their shock. My father's hand was trembling as he tried to straighten his tie. My mother was clutching a university program, her knuckles white. James was staring at me as if I were an alien, a creature from another world who just happened to be wearing his brother's face. "Alex," my father started, his voice a hoarse croak. He was trying to summon his old authority, the patriarchal tone that had governed my entire life. But it was gone. His voice was hollow. "We need to go. We can go home. Talk this through." He was still trying to manage me, to contain the situation, to bring me back into the fold where he was in charge. I stopped a few feet from them. "We're not going home, Dad," I said, my voice calm even, and utterly final. "My home hasn't been there for a very long time, and this isn't something for you to talk through. This is something for you to listen to." "We didn't know," my mother whispered, the words a desperate, tearful plea. "If we had known." "If you had known," I interrupted, my voice sharpening just enough to make her flinch, "you would have treated me differently. I know. That's the whole point. You shouldn't have had to know." I turned my gaze to James. He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. The invincible smirk was gone, replaced by a raw, gaping vulnerability. He, more than anyone, understood the magnitude of what had just happened. His world, built on a currency of parental approval and conventional success, had just been declared bankrupt. I reached into the inner pocket of my suit. The weight of the metal business cards felt solid, real. I pulled one out and held it out to my father. He stared at it, at the stark black card with the single, embossed address, as if I were handing him a live grenade. "Don't go to the airport," I said, my voice holding a command they had never heard from me before. "My car will be out front in 10 minutes. It will take you to a hotel, rest, and tonight at 7 o'clock, be at this address." I paused, letting the instructions sink in. "Come alone, and come prepared to do the one thing this family has never done. Listen." My father's trembling hand finally reached out and took the card. His fingers brushed against mine, and his skin was cold, clammy. I held his gaze for a long moment, then looked at my mother, and finally at James. I was no longer their son, their brother, in the way they understood. I was something else. A problem they couldn't solve. A success they couldn't claim. A stranger they had lived with their entire lives. Then, without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving them standing alone and shattered in the heart of my new empire. The private elevator opened with a soft chime, depositing my family into the heart of my world. The penthouse was silent, save for the faint, almost subliminal hum of the servers that were the company's lifeblood. The table was set, a simple but elegant meal waiting for them. I wanted no distractions, no waiters, no pretense. Just the four of us, and a decade of unspoken truths sitting between us. They walked in like ghosts, their movements stiff and uncertain. My father, a man used to commanding any room he entered, looked small beneath the high ceilings. My mother clutched her purse like a shield. James kept his eyes fixed on the floor, as if he was afraid the polished concrete might crack beneath his feet. They sat. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. It was my father, predictably, who broke it, attempting to reclaim some semblance of control. "Alex," he began, clearing his throat and adjusting his cuffs, an old habit of his when he was nervous. "I want you to know what I saw today. It's impressive, truly. We are all incredibly proud of you." He tried to smile. It was a ghastly, unconvincing thing. In fact, I've been thinking, the venture capital division at my firm, we have extensive experience scaling up tech companies. We could provide oversight, guidance, help you navigate the challenges ahead. We could make a family office, manage the inheritance. Seriously, Dad, guidance? The audacity of this man is staggering. He ignored Alex for 5 years, but now that there's a $140 million valuation, he wants to oversee the business. Alex's response was perfect. The only guidance he ever needed was for his dad to look up from his phone. Pure gold. I let him finish. I let the offer, so steeped in his own brand of arrogant paternalism, hang in the air. Then I put my fork down, the clink of metal on ceramic unnaturally loud in the silent room. "Guidance?" I repeated, my voice dangerously soft. "You think this is about me needing your guidance?" I leaned forward. "Let me be crystal clear. I don't need your help. I don't need your firm. I don't need your oversight. For the past 5 years, I have built a global company from my dorm room while you were praising James for getting a good summer internship. I have negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts, hired hundreds of employees, and patented technology that men like you pay fortunes to acquire. The only thing I ever needed from you was for you to look up from your phone when I was talking to you." He recoiled as if I had physically struck him. "You're not proud of me," I continued, the words coming out cold and precise. "You're impressed by a number on a screen. There's a difference. You're not sorry for dismissing me. You're sorry you placed your bets on the wrong son. Your pride is just a panicked attempt to get back in the game now that you've seen the scoreboard." My father's face went from pale to ashen. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time in his life, Richard Mitchell was speechless. My mother began to cry, the soft, helpless sobs of a woman who had spent her life avoiding confrontation. "We do love you, Alex," she whispered. "You're our son." "I know you love me," I said, and to my own surprise, my voice softened. I wasn't angry at her. I pitied her. "But you love me like you love your fine china. You keep me on a shelf, bring me out for special occasions, and you're terrified I might break. You never loved what I was actually doing, what I was passionate about. You just wanted me to be less complicated, less trouble." My words landed, and I saw from her expression that she knew they were true. Then I turned to James. He was the one I needed to understand. He finally looked up, and his eyes were swimming with a confusing mix of shame, resentment, and a dawning, terrifying respect. "And you," I said, not unkindly, You loved being the easy one, didn't you? The one who followed the map, the one who brought home the good grades and the conventional job titles." He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. And then he did the last thing I ever expected him to do. He broke. "Yes," he whispered, his voice cracking. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at our father. "Yes, I loved it. It was easy. It was what you wanted." He turned his tortured gaze back to me. "My promotion. The trip to Paris. It feels so stupid now. It feels like a kid's trophy. My whole life, I've been running a race on a track you built for me," he said to our dad. "And Alex was out in the wilderness, building his own damn stadium." He dropped his head into his hands. "I don't even know who I am without that. It's all fake." The confession, so raw and so real, hung in the air. It was the first truly authentic moment our family had shared in years. The chime of the elevator cut through the tension. The doors slid open, and my grandmother Margaret stepped out. She radiated a quiet, formidable power that instantly made her the center of gravity in the room. "It seems I've arrived just in time for the truth," she said, her sharp eyes taking in the scene. She walked to the table, her gaze lingering on each of us before finally settling on her son, Richard. "I called you this morning, Richard, because you needed a shock to the system," she said, her voice steady and clear. "You needed to see what your fear has cost you, your fear of anything you can't easily quantify and control." She then turned to my father, her expression softening slightly. "Do you know why I was so insistent on having my own savings, Richard? My mad money, as your father used to call it?" My father shook his head numbly. "Because your father, a man I loved dearly, was like you. He was a good man, a safe man. He wanted predictability. He couldn't understand why I wanted to invest a little money in a struggling local artist, or why I found the stock market so boring. He wanted me to be predictable too." She sighed, a sound filled with decades of quiet frustration. "So, I built my own small world in secret, just like Alex did. The money I gave him, it wasn't just money. It was a legacy. It was the passing of a torch, the legacy of quiet rebellion. The story landed, a final, devastating revelation. My father looked at his mother, and in his eyes, I saw the collapse of his entire understanding of his own life. He had failed me in the exact same way his own father had failed his mother. It wasn't just a personal failing, it was a generational one, a cycle of fear and control. And I, with my grandmother's secret help, had just broken it. My father buried his face in his hands, and for the first time in my life, I saw him weep. Weeks passed. There were more conversations, awkward phone calls, tentative emails. It was a slow, painful process of rebuilding from the rubble. Then, one afternoon, James asked me to meet him. He chose a small, unpretentious coffee shop near my office. He was dressed not in a lawyer's suit, but in jeans and a simple sweater. He looked younger and tired. He didn't apologize. He didn't ask for a job. He just slid a thick, bound folder across the table. "I've been looking into Victor Chang's company," he said, his voice quiet but focused. "His latest SEC filings are a mess. He's hiding debt in shell corporations. But more importantly, I spent the last 72 hours reading the patent filings for his new flagship product. He's infringing on our core predictive algorithm. Not just infringing, it's a direct theft of intellectual property. I've detailed the specific lines of code in this report." He pushed the folder closer. "This is enough to file a preliminary injunction that would not only halt his product launch, but likely trigger a federal investigation into his company. It's a kill shot." I opened the folder. It was a work of art. The legal analysis was precise, ruthless, and utterly brilliant. He had used his expensive conventional education to forge the perfect weapon for my unconventional war. He wasn't asking for a place in my world. He was showing me, with undeniable proof, that he already belonged there. I looked up from the pages at my brother's anxious, hopeful face. And for the first time since we were small children, building forts out of couch cushions, I smiled at him. A real, genuine smile. "This is impressive, James," I said. Really impressive. I close the folder. Finish your coffee, then walk back to the office with me. My legal team needs to meet you. Now, this is character development I can get behind. James finally realized he was running a race on a pre-built track while Alex was out building the whole stadium. Using his legal skills to take down Victor Chang was the best way to earn his seat at the table. Redemption isn't free, but it looks good on James. The first dinner that felt less like a peace negotiation and more like a family meal took place a month later. By unspoken agreement, the venue was neutral territory, my grandmother's house. The air wasn't thick with tension anymore. It was just a little awkward, like a poorly fitted suit that everyone was still getting used to. We sat around her worn oak table, the same table where she had handed me the passbook that changed my life. The conversation was stilted at first, filled with safe topics, the weather, a neighbor's new puppy. But then something shifted. My father, who had always steered conversations toward his own accomplishments, turned to me. "So," he said, a genuine hesitant curiosity in his eyes. "This quantum computing angle. I was reading an article about it. It said it could break all current forms of encryption. Is that what your tech protects against?" I started to explain, bracing myself for the familiar glazed-over expression, but it never came. He listened. He asked follow-up questions. They weren't the sharp, insightful questions my grandmother had asked, but they were the questions of a man who was genuinely trying to understand a world he had once dismissed. He was learning my language. My mother watched us, a small, real smile on her face. She talked about a local charity she had started volunteering for, her voice filled with a quiet passion I hadn't heard from her in years. She was no longer just Eleanor Mitchell, the society wife. She was Eleanor, a person with her own interests. James and I, for our part, ended up in a deep, energetic debate about corporate law. He was now the interim head of my in-house legal team, and he was thriving. He was challenging me, pushing back on my assumptions, using his sharp, logical mind not to compete with me, but to strengthen my company. He had found his stadium, and it was right next to mine. As the evening wound down and I was getting ready to leave, my phone vibrated. A text from Grandma Margaret. It was a single image, the just-released cover of Forbes magazine. My face was on it, under the headline, "The Ghost of Silicon Valley, How Alex Mitchell Built a $140 Million Empire in Secret." There was no caption, no words were necessary. I smiled, pocketed the phone, and walked outside into the cool night air. I looked back at the house, at the warm yellow light spilling from the kitchen window. I could see the silhouettes of my family, still talking, their movements easy, natural. They were still complicated, still a work in progress, but they were my work in progress, my family. I stood there for a long moment, the son who had been invisible, the CEO who had been a ghost, the man who had burned down his own family just to rebuild it from the foundations up. And I realized that the ultimate victory wasn't the money, or the company, or even the look on their faces at graduation. It was this quiet, imperfect, hopeful moment. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about accepting that people can change, that stories can have new chapters, and that sometimes the most valuable thing you can build is a bridge back to the people you thought you'd lost forever. Wow, Opie, what an ending! I love that Alex didn't just cut them off completely, but he rebuilt the family on his terms. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about making them learn your language. And shout out to Grandma for being the secret genius investor. What do you guys think? Was the family's change of heart genuine, or are they just impressed by the billions? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more satisfying revenge stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace!